Welcome to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. In this segment, I update James on my talk with a grant administrator, and we start thinking about how we might be a little more strategic and thinking longer term about the point of applying for grants. Hope you enjoy.
Hey, Pat.
Yes, James. Hi.
Apparently you have yet another exciting grant update.
Yeah, I do, which is kind of astonishing considering I have applied for 0 grants since my last grant update. Boy, did I fall off that damn wagon. Anyway, I wanted to update you in that I did a follow-up call on the research grant I had applied for. And I had applied for this Marian Heb research grant through Access Copyright in Canada, $3,000. So what I loved about that application was that it forced me to hone my thinking around my novel, and I came up with some better ideas. I received a letter saying the grant committee approved your project, but we ran out of money before we got to you, so you're not getting any money. And then they offered a follow-up call.
So you got approved, but you were down far enough on the list that they ran out of funds. So it was a yes, no. So a win.
Yes. Yeah.
Nonetheless. But then they were open to having a conversation.
Yeah. And
awesome.
they said, if you want to find out how to strengthen your application, give us a call. So I did. I set up an appointment. The administrators are, I believe, they're in Saskatchewan, I think Saskatoon. And I had the call with this really delightful person who herself is a creative person. She's applied for many grants, she said. And what she loves about them is that they allowed her to reacquaint herself with herself as an artist, because you're describing a project you want money for. And then she said one way that she looks at them is that, say she's got a project in mind. She asks herself, if I had unlimited cash, how would I realize this project? How would I do this? If I had a little bit, how do I do this? And if I have none, how do I do this? So she gave me kind of a little perspective, on the purpose really of grants, which is that you're never probably going to get the unlimited cash part, but you can actually direct your activities around a project based on the idea that, there's more than one way to approach any project. And so thinking about it that way,
Wow.
It allows you to be creative, I guess, in how you approach it.
Wow. Wow. So that has really opened the mind.
Good.
That when, approaching a big project, right? Say collection of short stories or, a bunch of themed paintings or what have you, that you think, how would I approach it with unlimited funds? How would I approach it with some? How would I approach it with none? And for most of us in this mid-level, the none part,
Is the
but it
norm.
really does force you to really think like, okay, how do I prioritize? How do I, think about how I'm going to get this out?
Yeah. It's so cool. And just telling you about it now makes me think just the timing of this call. I didn't write the date on the piece of paper, but it was before I decided to pull the trigger on a DIY retreat. So it could have motivated me. I think it's related. Anyway, so she gave me some general feedback about the funding situation, that this particular deadline, they got 25% of their normal funding. So they get varying amounts of funding. And I think that's what she said. I can't even understand my own notes. But what she said about my project was, just generally first, the review panel will talk the projects over again and again as they move them around on the list. So it's not a one and done conversation. They're constantly talking about it. She said one of the things that made it easy for them to talk about my project was that they could call it something. They called it the Frankenstein novel. And that allowed them there was a shorthand. So there's a little bit of a hook in how I described it, because it doesn't need 30 words to describe what I'm doing. All they had to say was the Frankenstein novel, because I guess I'm the only person who applied with a Frankenstein novel idea. So I thought that was really good information. she said that the inquiry question, actually, the part that I had the most trouble with, for them, it's very important, and that I could keep strengthening the inquiry question. She said it obviously worked because I made the list of people who would get funding,
Mhm.
that but I could have connected it more deeply to the research. Like
Mm,
the research I provided a list, a bibliography basically of all the research I was going to do, and it wasn't clear exactly how I was going to relate that to the inquiry question.
mhm.
Um, she said this is the second biggest number of applications this program has ever had. So
Wow.
the competition was very, very fierce.
Wow.
Yeah,
So okay, so there's a lot of wins here. Sorry to
I
interrupt.
thought, yeah,
I
no,
just
that's fine. Yeah,
make this point is that they had huge competition. You still made the list,
yeah.
and you would have gotten funded, but for whatever reason this year it was an off year funding wise. So huge re demand, lower than normal funding, and you
Mhm.
made the list, but not quite the cutoff.
Yeah, yeah. And so what I could have done more of was improve the connection in my writing sample. I don't even remember what I submitted, but I could have made the connection to the Frankenstein sort of concept more clear with the sample
Uh-huh.
I submitted. So next time I submit to that grant, I will make sure that there's enough of what I'm talking about in the inquiry question informing the actual sample of the novel that I
Right.
have to send. And it wasn't a big sample. I can't remember how many pages, but
Yeah.
it wasn't huge.
I'm always surprised at how small of a sample a lot of these places ask for.
Yeah. She did say that the committee recognized that I displayed the ability to complete the research. So that was part of my plan, you know?
Yeah.
Um, she suggested they thought there might be more research beyond the books, that I could have had some experiential research stuff in there, which hadn't occurred to me. So that was cool. They wanted a bit more clarity because I had split my research titles, books I was going to read and resources, into phases, you know, the discovery phase and then another phase and another phase after that. And I mentioned site research, like going down to the settings in this Vancouver area where the novel would be taking place. I mentioned it, but I never went back to that and how it relates to the readings in the discovery phase. So I think they wanted to see a bit more kind of integration between my plan of what I was going to do and how it mattered to the project, that I
Mhm.
needed on-site research. And in fact, I could have probably asked for more funding for that aspect because
Wow.
it takes a while to drive around, you know.
Yeah.
So she said, do apply with the same project next year, or you can if you want to. If you do, make sure that it's something that's still exciting you about that project, because presumably you work on the project regardless of whether you get the grant. You're not
Right.
holding on,
Right.
otherwise you'd never write anything, for God's sake. So she's like, suggested things along the lines of, you know, you might say something like, I need to go to this place. So it wouldn't be the same place because I've
Mhm.
changed and the project will have changed by
Yeah.
this time next year. Or you might say something like, I did this over the period of the time since I last applied. You might not have to get that specific, but this isn't exactly the direction I want to go in anymore, or vice
Mhm.
versa. I didn't want to go in this direction, but now I see it's the thing to do. So they want to know that you are still kind of, even though they might not know that you applied for the same project last year because it's a completely new
Mhm.
panel, they do want to see some progression of engagement with the project between
Mhm.
applications, and that so it's fine to rubber stamp your application, but you might, it might behoove you to not do that.
Yeah. So that brings up your DIY going to Spain writing retreat, right?
Yeah.
Which shows is another way to show your engagement.
Oh, I
It's
never thought of that.
also another opportunity to deepen your engagement,
Yeah.
uh, so that you can drill down and be, that level of specificity that they're really looking for.
Yeah.
can help with that. And then it can help improve, and this is Richard Kelly Chemic coming back,
Yeah.
improve the next segment of there's an urgency to this project because.
Yes.
And I wonder if what we're learning about this process is that it's less that it's one and done, right? So you
Totally.
send an app, your pitch or your application, and
Yeah.
they say no, and you shake your head and walk away. Or is
Yeah.
it like, no, here's my first draft. They say edit this. Here's the
Mhm.
revision, right? Next
Yeah.
year you come back with your revised draft.
Yeah.
Um, which makes my no at Yaddo a little more frustrating because I have to wait until 2027, I think,
Fuck Yada.
be able to get back to them.
Yeah,
But
I don't want to go there.
I know, yeah. Yeah, I don't want you anymore, Yaddo.
Yeah, no, fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway. A little bit of hostility there.
And then the other thing, and this is sort of a question and sort of maybe a thought to follow, but so they shorthanded it the Frankenstein novel.
Yeah,
And the thing that's when you mention that is what I love about this project is that it is so much more than a Frankenstein novel.
yeah.
And it makes me wonder, one of the targets is getting them to come up with a better shorthand by presenting a really crisp, tight tagline.
Yeah.
Because what you want to do, and when we've talked about it, it's very, very clear that what you want to do is very, very unique, and it's very compelling to me.
Huh.
Um, and so coming up with that tagline to make it easier for them to come up with their own, even more compelling shorthand for this.
Yeah. I mean, I was happy that she said mine had a hook. I thought, well, that's good because a lot of I'm sure if you don't have a hook that's memorable, it just makes them hard to talk about it. Oh, it's the one about the guy with the horse, and and they're like, which guy with which horse? Like there's probably more than
Right.
one. I'm just I'm not talking about Richard Kelly Chemic's book, Hello Horse, by the way. I don't know why that came into my mind. Anyway, but yes, I think you're right. There could be, I mean, people in pop, who just know the pop culture Frankenstein, they will think of a certain lurchy monster walking around. But if it's a committee of peers who've read your inquiry question, they're going to know it's a lot deeper than that. It's just that that's the hook they can use to talk about it with each other. I wanted to add too that one piece of advice I got from the project administrator was make sure you answer the question, why is the author the person to do this project? And I
Mm,
don't think I addressed that in my application. And then, think about how do I want my application to stand out? So that speaks exactly to what you were just saying is do I want it to stand out as the Frankenstein novel, given all the layer of easy things to think of around Frankenstein? And then the other thing was the research needs to make sense in a specific time and place.
hmm
So I'm thinking now that because I'm going to Spain for the DIY retreat, not Sicily, by the way. I'm,
We've, yeah, well, we've got our cartographers. The gifted underachiever cartographers are hard at work trying to figure out what it is you're doing.
yeah.
So,
But now that if I do bring in the fact that I did a DIY retreat and mention that it was out of Canada, I think what I would consider doing also is that Mary Shelley, the summer that she wrote Frank or started writing Frankenstein, they traveled in Europe. And if I could tie in a place in Spain and even bring a location into the novel, because I haven't fully fleshed out the plot, there's no reason that the
mhm,
person can't have either memories or future planning around Spain or physically even go there. Like it's pretty nascent still in its jellification. So if I can tie that in, that would be very cool. Then I could say I actually went there in order
mhm,
to be at this place where this happened because I want to tie it into the original in this
mhm.
way. And then I'm not going to bullshit about it. Like I'm not going to do it if it doesn't work, if it doesn't
Yeah.
make sense. But if it could make sense, I'm going to think about it.
Absolutely making this commitment to leave home and, spend money and commit time and get away from, and I would include, I could have, how long are you going to be gone for? A month?
1 full month, Sarah.
Right. So when you think of a month, that's 1/12 of your income generating period for the
Don't
years.
fucking remind me. I'm nervous as a cat around that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that might, sweeten the deal for these people to help make up so that you
Send
can
me
get,
3 grand.
yeah. And then I'm thinking too, because this tagline kind of like, how do you think about this thing, right?
Yeah.
So,
How do you
um,
talk about it with other committee members? That's what you're trying to.
yeah, how do you talk about it? But how do, when they shorthand it,
Yeah.
does their shorthand have that urgency?
Oh
And
my God. How get the urgency into the shorthand. Really?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And one of the things, and I get what you're saying is that since they've read it, when they say Frankenstein novel, they all have a sense of it. But maybe there's a way to increase the excitement, the urgency. And when I think about when you're pitching to agents and one thing and another, you say this explores the intersection of this and that, or this
Yeah.
explores. And so I would think, what is it that, because your story isn't just a Frankenstein story, right? It's
No,
really
no, no, no.
exploring a much deeper,
It's a very weird story.
yeah. Well, yeah. So it's unique, it's quirky, but it's exploring something that's a lot deeper, which, the
Yeah.
Frankenstein story, if you really dig into it, explores something that's deeper than just a monster wandering the countryside. But
Yeah, it explores like how do you reinvent yourself when you're drowning because it opens with a drowning. It explores the state of like many of the humans I know, and I'm focusing on the female experience, but it's everybody in that novel is drowning in some way in their lives. And how do you pull out of that, right? It's without resources, without knowing what to do, that's kind of what it's exploring.
yeah. So I think that's brilliant. Yeah, if you can get them to where it's the drowning Frankenstein, then you know what I mean? It's like generating that excitement, generating that urgency,
Yeah.
kind of thing. And then the other question I had too is, like any other many creatives, and like probably most, if not 99.9% of writers, we want to do things on our own, or we feel like that's the way that we're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
Have you thought about bringing in other people to, not so much like a paid consultant, because, I'm not sure that's the best idea, but other people to review, your application.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. Well, the only reason I got as far as I did was because my brother was visiting from New Zealand because of my mom's stuff. And he's a very sharp guy, and he was a journalist. He's got a writing background, really intelligent. So he helped me. And then my friend Kate, who's in my writing group, she's fantastic. And she really helped me. So, because I sent her the draft saying I don't have a clue about how any of this relates to make an inquiry question. And she kind of like sent me such great feedback on what I'd written and then suggestions that's how I got it as far as I did. So absolutely, I would bring in. I would have to say friends, because I don't think I would pay a consultant.
Well,
Hmm?
here's a big question. Would so I feel like one of the other things that I've learned about this is I need to be willing to stretch,
Yeah,
right? Take a little bit more risk.
yeah.
And if you were to say to me, James, who should I reach out to? I would say Richard Kelly Kemick, right?
Oh, ask Richard to help me out.
Yeah. And so how does that sit?
I feel like it sits like, I mean, I'd want to offer him money. Like no, because I know
Yeah.
that this kind of thing is not. You don't do it lightly. Read somebody's shit. Like it's time consuming.
Yeah. Well, I mean, regardless of, sure. To me, it feels like that's that next step.
You're right. That would make me very uncomfortable. I should probably think about doing it.
Yeah.
Would you do it?
Would I reach out for you?
No. Would you reach out for your own grant app to Richard? Would you do it?
You know what? If I was on the reverse side of this conversation, I would feel exactly how you're feeling, but I would say, yeah, that's what I got to do.
You're right. You're
And
right.
maybe it's not Richard. We shouldn't just maybe there's somebody else, but
Mhm.
uh, a Richard like persona.
Yeah.
Um, and I bring him up just because he's had so much experience with being on the receiving side of
Yeah.
experience and that kind of thing. So he's the perfect person, really.
He
And
is. So if Richard offered it as a paid service, I'd jump on it. He'd be the perfect guy. I think I need that thing where it's not a personal favor. That's the part that
yeah,
would
no,
stop me.
I would, say absolutely offer him, somebody, whoever it is you reach out to. But my gut reaction is I would not seek out somebody who offers a paid service.
How
Um,
come?
I think you need somebody who has some investment. There is a definite value to going out and hiring a service to do certain things, but
Yeah.
it feels to me that you need somebody who's like, yeah, I'll charge you $500, but it's somebody who there's kind of a personal connection.
Yeah.
You
Fair
know,
enough. I was just looking at a website of somebody who does the grants, and this person has received access copyright grants, Canada Council for the Arts, Ontario Arts Council. They have a lot of credibility for me, and they have, the options in terms of how you can engage with them. They're not cheap. The top one is almost a third of the cost of what you'd get from the grant. So you'd want to do that as a learning experience,
hmm
not as just can you check this one grant because you're never going to make your
Yeah.
money back. I mean, it starts much lower than that. It starts for a couple of hundred, but it goes up to 725. But Canadian, which is I'm not saying it's terrible. Like it's a lot of feedback that you get, but I would probably take the feedback I got from the arts administrator, take
hmm
her advice, and um, strengthen it as much as possible there. And then part of the thing I'd be looking for is, who who else would be interested in this project if I was going to pay somebody for feedback.
hmm
Like, what do you think? What I mean, I'd be asking
Yeah.
them, what do you think? What other organization that offers grants might be
Yeah.
interested in this project?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So, to kind of come back full circle is you pitched for this grant. They
Yeah,
said yes for whatever, you had a mix of things, so you didn't actually get funded. They're very encouraging about you coming back. And then they spent time with you to go through, here's what you could do better. So, in a sense, they just saved you that 750 bucks, right? Uh,
exactly.
and so now it's trying to figure out, okay, how do I up the game? What are these resources? Context building, right? We've
Yeah,
heard
that's a good
that.
one. Yeah.
And you've got this DIY retreat. You've got, we've built some relationships and access with the podcast.
Hmm.
So there's more resources, I think.
Oh, absolutely. The grants weren't even on my radar this time last year. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't until we started the grants experiment in August of 2024 that I started even thinking about, well, grants. Okay, let's figure them out. But I have to say, I still have this background feeling in my mind that I can make more money just working than
Yeah.
spending that same amount of time filling out a grant application. If I put that the 8 or
Mhm.
10 or 12 hours it takes me to properly conceive of and execute a grant application to working, I'll make the amount of the grant, and it's
Mhm.
guaranteed. So there I do have this kind of I realize there's a larger game. The more grants you get, the more opportunities you're getting. Whereas straight working for money doesn't have that added value. But I think it's just an old mindset thing where I'd rather get the money for working than for competing. It's just how I
Right.
feel.
Right. Yeah, well, and it's still not guaranteed. I mean,
That's what I
you
mean.
hire a consultant, you can do this, you can do that, and then still not get the funding in the end. And I think that's that mid-level conundrum that we
Yeah,
all, if you're at the beginning of your career in any creative endeavor, anybody who gets you to not waste time on anything
yeah,
is my value, right?
yeah. For
So,
sure.
and any grant that you get is really, really high value because, it's a curated thing that they've selected you for. And
Yeah.
then you get to this mid-level and it's sort of like, well, I'm making money doing my editing or what have you.
Yeah.
Uh, so do I want to take time from that to get something that's not a sure thing? It just gets more complicated. But when you reach that upper echelon, right, then it's a little bit more of a sure thing. The money seems to be a lot bigger.
True. Yeah, there is a ladder. So interesting. I'm thinking now of what the grant administrator said. If I had unlimited cash, how do I do this project? And I'm thinking about the novel itself now. If I had unlimited cash, I'd give myself a month off just to figure out grants for
Mm,
that project, because getting a grant for a project increases the project's visibility. It makes it easier to get a publisher. Like it has all these add-on effects, that or knock-on effects. I don't know what they're called exactly, but that push the project forward. So absolutely, if I didn't need to pay my mortgage and all that other stuff,
mhm.
I, if I had all the cash in the world, I would really engage with grants, because I think the value they add is much, much more than just the money. It's a way of amplifying your own profile. And so that's what I would do. But then you come to the mid-level conundrum, as you say, which is that I either have no or a little money for this project. So is the time I could be spending either making money to fund the retreat, or to get time off to do the project,
Mhm.
is foregoing that money in order to for free study how to write grant applications. Does that make sense to me in the medium term? Which is maybe the mid-level thing, is that we are always thinking medium term. Maybe we're not thinking long term enough to become higher level. Like I don't actually know. I think
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
question, right?
No, I think that's a huge, huge, huge point, right? So if you're thinking, yeah, unlimited resources, right? Because is it like it's not because I'm rich I have unlimited resources, but it's because I'm plugged into MacArthur Foundation and these other foundations that give out huge sums of money. Like
Oh,
near where I live, Ken Burns is doing his operation, right? So
mm,
he did Civil War, baseball, he did very famous documentaries,
yeah,
all grant funded. I mean, the documentaries obviously bring in, finances, but he gets a lot of support from these huge foundations. And when you look at it's consistent. Like
yeah,
he can have a certain reliance that he's going to get that kind of funding. And
yeah,
so it frees up a lot of opportunity. But we got to figure out that either the lower levels where it's some or none.
yeah,
It's a tr that it's yeah. Are we screwing ourselves by limiting our vision
yeah.
as you
I,
or
I think that's the question we should end this on, because that's the
yeah.
$64,000 question, or the $3,000 question if you're talking about this particular grant. But it is like, and we've come up against this before. It's capacity and
Yeah.
money,
Yeah.
and you can increase your capacity to be awarded grants if you are willing and able to forego earning income in the time that it takes you to conceive and execute grant applications. Like it's not a simple answer, because these things do take so much time, and they are so. And yes, I'm on the first year of doing this, so I don't have a catalog of applications that I can just go, okay, I'll take this paragraph from over here and blah blah. I think I need to have a mindset change in how I view them in order for me to feel like it's worth
Wow.
doing them.
Very well said.
The
And
end.
we fade to black.
Thanks so much for listening to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. We would love to hear how we're doing, so please leave a comment, join our chat page, or send us an email to giftedunderachievers@substack.com. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Hope you have a great creative week.